Shalom, welcome to the Jewish View. My name is Rabbi Nachman Simon with the Chabad House of Dalmar, together with my co-host Mark Ronich of jbiztechvalley.com and Statewide News Service. We have a very, very special guest with us, our own host, really, because we produce from the Bethlehem Library. Geoff Fitzpatrick, you are the director of the Bethlehem Library. So first we have to say thank you for hosting us for, I think, about 25 years I've been doing the show here in the Bethlehem Library.
Well, thank you for shooting the show here. It's great.
Yes.
Thank you.
It's nice to see you here. I know that you're a busy person, so thank you for taking time out of your schedule to join us.
My pleasure.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I'd like to ask a question
Sure,
right
go
away
ahead.
because we're in the electronic age. In a library, obviously you think of books, and even though, truth is, I'd like you to explain it because I know myself, there's so many other actually capacities. They have 3D machines, etc. So a library is more than books, but you think of books. On the other hand, everybody's the print. I mean, you have newspapers, and they're losing money right and left, and they're downsizing. So how does that affect the library with books?
Well, there's no doubt that electronic media definitely has an impact on the library. But luckily for us, it's actually an exciting time to be in the library because we have avenues into all those new types of media as well. So while books are still the brand, we talk about libraries in general. Books are absolutely the brand. People associate libraries with books. Libra, right? It's the root of means book. We still have lots of books, and I do not foresee books going away at all. However, we are also heavily invested in ebooks. We're heavily invested. One of the biggest services we have is internet access. I think a lot of people own a device, but they don't necessarily have the $50 a month to pay for internet access in their home, and they come to the library. In addition, the library is a nice third place. We talk about, people go to work, they have their home, and then they need a third place. And for some people, that's Starbucks or the bookstore or whatever. I like it.
Kids to do homework. I mean, it's a quiet place.
Well, quiet sometimes is debatable. We do have quiet study areas, but there's no doubt that there's a lot of studying that goes on here, particularly in the afternoons. If you come into the library in the afternoon, you'll see there's not an empty horizontal surface anywhere, as the students are in here.
Is this the only library branch that's on Delaware Avenue? Is that the only library, or are there other branches possibly?
The Bethlehem Public Library is a single branch library. So in the Bethlehem School District, which is the area that we're chartered to serve, we're the only library in there. However, there is not that far away on Delaware Avenue, there's the Albany Public Library Delaware branch. And people often confuse us, but because we're part of the same library system, people can use both libraries. So if someone comes here in confusion, we frequently explain to them how the libraries are chartered, but we'll say, but while you're here, we have resources for you that you can use here as well.
Well, we've booked guests for this show that went to the Albany Library on Delaware Avenue.
Yes,
and waited there, and then say, no, keep going.
Well, and the addresses start over, right?
Yes.
So it's, there's two 400, so we're 451 Delaware Avenue in Delmar.
Right.
There's also a 451 Delaware Avenue in Albany.
But this is the only branch. So do you think that there needs to be, as Bethlehem has grown in population, and can the library expand to another branch?
We certainly could. That's a subject of debate with the Board of Trustees frequently. And I think if you were looking at population, if you looked at the map of the school district, you might say Clarksville needs a branch because they're the furthest away from this location. But actually, if you looked at a population density map, the area that would probably I don't want to say deserve, but whatever, the area that would call for a library would be Glenmont, down in the Glenmont area. Now, the thing about that is, as you're down in Glenmont, or you're in Glenmont, you're not that far from the Ravenna School District line, and that's in the town of Bethlehem, but you actually get to that line, and that's covered by our friends to the south, the RCS Library, the Ravenna Queen Selkirk Library.
And where is I don't even know that.
It's in Ravenna. It's in actually the town of Ravenna, but it covers
like 10 miles away from the border.
Yes, from their
Glenmont,
border, right?
From
Exactly.
Furbush Road, let's
Sure,
say.
exactly.
So if you located a library along Furbush Road, as they're trying to develop that area of Glenmont, that might make sense.
Yeah, and actually we've talked, there's been discussions, lots of talking about how best we can serve everybody in the school district. And, as of right now, there are no plans. But there's...
Let's talk about the budget. Money is money nowadays and everything. And we talked to the town supervisor. Of course, we talked to everybody in the budget planning. And just to Mark's ready to spend more money to build a library. I don't know if people are going
It's
to be.
bonded out. It's a loan. It's a 30-year bond. It's nothing that that can't be done. I mean, it's something that can be done if the will is there to do it.
I mean, definitely the most efficient thing is to have one location, and we're not replicating services. And it's a hard business decision to make, is where do you accept those inefficiencies because the service need is so great in a certain area.
Now, you're a $4 million budget.
That's about roughly.
Yeah,
Yep.
3.9, 4
Yeah.
million. And I saw in your annual report that about 3/4 of that goes for salaries.
You have personnel, right. Any service industry is mostly people. And
Are you paying well? Is that why so much goes to that? I mean,
it's about normal for a library. I think we do pay pretty well, but we get excellent staff here. There's no doubt about it that the library staff here is the resource of the library. The librarians and the non-masters staff here in the library provide excellent service, and that's the service the library provides.
Talk about money, but the crunch. I mean, books. I mean, anybody who goes to any bookstore knows that books are getting more and more expensive. Does that put a crunch on you? I'm saying every year maybe you have to buy less books because each book is more expensive.
I would say my goal is to never be purchasing fewer materials. Now, we might be shifting materials from physical, we might be shifting money from the physical collection to the digital collection, but as far as total number of materials available, absolutely, that's the reason we're here. So no, I absolutely have no interest in cutting that.
but don't the book companies give you the books?
No, oh, that would be nice.
Why don't they, for educational purposes? Or do they give you a cut rate or something? Or-
We absolutely get a good rate. We'll pay, for most hardcover books, we'll pay an average of about 42%. Our discount is about 42%. So that's a good price off of what people are going to pay retail. But
But these HarperCollins and Random House, who have millions and billions of dollars,
they're absolutely not donating books to the library. You will sometimes, there'll be a program through some of the publishers like Scholastic where we'll have books that get donated to us, but they're more books that we would come into the library and get given directly out to children.
You have
or
a
something.
Friends of the Bethlehem Public Library.
Absolutely.
And that's a not-for-profit.
Correct, because
So couldn't the books be given to the not-for-profit so the book companies, the publishers can
I think you
write
should
it
make
off?
Mark a liaison for
listen, if the publishers were interested in giving books, they wouldn't need to give them to the Friends. They could give them right to the library.
And with a tax write-off?
Absolutely, because even though we're a government entity, it's still eligible for that same tax write-off as giving to a nonprofit.
Well, so what's the budget that you have for books that you spend on?
We try to keep it about between 10 and 12% of the overall budget. So let's call it 400,000, and it's not just books, but materials, databases, all kinds of different materials.
Right. Well, I see that you have a...
To talk about other things, again, we talked about library, and I know, and I've been, like I say, I live in Delmar, so of course I'm here at the library many times. I think I use more resources than most people. But, like you say, sometimes you need a computer and the internet access, and there's about 10 computers, and they're constantly being used.
Sure.
Sometimes it's busy. But like I say, there are other things that are being done, like the 3D, and I've said to people, 3D, I didn't even know that. So I don't know, I think there may be, first of all, talk about it, but number two is just maybe publicize the resources that the library, I didn't even know I could go to the library and...
Well, I think there's a lot of things.
using-
There's a lot of things we're doing here that people just don't know about. If you haven't used a public library in 10 or 15 years, there's things that we're doing that people just simply aren't aware of. But the 3D printer is an interesting thing.
That's me.
Yeah, right, there you go. A 3D printer is an interesting thing. It's a flip-in culture recently with libraries. Traditionally, we have been places where people come to consume information. Whether they're reading a book or watching a film strip, or do people even know what a film strip is anymore? But whatever, consuming media of different types. That's what the
Right.
libraries were for. Take it home, use it here, whatever. It was a one-directional consumption of information. Recently in libraries, one of the things we've become very interested in is making. How do we flip that over and where people make the library a place where people come and actually create? It turns out that libraries have been doing this for years. We work with authors. We have local forums. We have spaces. We have knitting groups that meet here in the library. They're creating here. They're using the space of the library in a non-traditional way, and just formalizing that a little bit. So the 3D printer is just a piece of that. So it's a place where it's a tool that people can use if they can create something digitally, and come here in the library and then print it out and create, a thing. And the actual printing of the 3D printer is exciting and kind of cool. But the learning that happens is actually, especially with teens and
Do you
kids.
charge for the use of the 3D?
There's not a charge to use. It's just a recovery for the cost of the plastic. So it's about 10 cents a gram. Whenever somebody prints something out, we have to cost recover the plastic that gets used to create the widget, and that's just like we charge 10 cents a page to print. It's just we're just trying to recover the costs on that. So the learning happens with the 3D design. It's digital design, and those are skills that everyone, but certainly children and teens, need to have in our new business market. It's a very marketable skill to be able to design in 3D.
I guess so. And you also have museum passes. You have wireless access, wireless printing, study rooms, computer partners, playaway, ebooks. Playaways? What's
Yeah, playaways are, it's an audiobook. So we still call them books on tape. You still see people call them books on tape.
Yeah.
They're not on tape anymore. So they moved to CD. So a lot of people have CD players in their car. And then the next iteration of this is something called a playaway, where it's like a preloaded MP3 player. So for people who don't want to download audiobooks, which we also offer, onto their iPhone or whatever device that they have, they can just check out one of these little devices, and it has a little lanyard you can hang it around your neck and use it while you're jogging or in the gym or while you're in the house doing whatever. You can carry it around with you. It's just a little digital audiobook player. It just is a one-trick pony. It just plays that one audiobook.
Right. Any charge for that?
No.
No.
It's just it's another addition.
And the yearbook, the Bethlehem School District yearbooks are online?
Yeah, that was actually a very exciting project. We used volunteers from the community to scan. We bought a very nice book scanner that allows the book, maybe this is too technical, but anyway, it allows the book to lay down without breaking the spine. So the book doesn't have to lay flat. It can lay kind of at an angle and protect the book, but get a nice full scan of the page. So we trained volunteers to take scans of every page in the yearbooks going back as far as we had. And then we use the same volunteers to actually index and name every one of the seniors that were in there. There's the name under there. And we made an index of that, put the pages right up, linked the names to the index. So if someone searches in a Google search for a particular name, they can end up on this page, click straight through, and go right to an image of the page where their aunt, uncle, grandfather,
and how
parent.
did you come up with wanting to do this when so many other schools don't bother? Or,
Right. Well, it's when we look at our library, libraries have different purposes. Or a public library, we don't have much that is truly a unique collection. What's a unique collection of the Bethlehem Public Library? Certainly, every public library in the country has a copy of the latest James Patterson novel. Yeah. Fine, it should be here, but it's not unique. We looked at what we had as far as unique collections. The yearbooks are a unique collection.
Sure.
It's something that we are the curator for.
Well, they're the historical documents of how the town has evolved and grown, and whether it's through what the students were wearing at the time, so just culture.
Right. Well, and we are part of the curators of local history. And this is one of the things. And people don't think about yearbooks as being local history, but they absolutely are. And, we work with the Historical Society and with the town historian. We're part of that. We're part of that culture.
And what's the spotlight online?
Sure.
That sounds exciting.
We had a historical record of the Spotlight, which we had bound for years. We brought it in, and we would keep the paper, and we would bind them together. Working with the Spotlight, we took... using grant money from the Friends and a couple other grants that we managed to cobble together, we took those books of newspapers and sent them out and had them microfilmed, which sounds a little old-timey, but microfilm is really one of the last good true preservation media. But at the same time, we had it scanned online. So now they're scanned into PDFs, they're keyword searchable, all the way back as far as we have them.
And that's part of history.
Sure it is. It's the history of the town.
That is. That's another part of it. That's why I brought it in with the online, with the books.
Absolutely.
The yearbooks.
And it's another unique collection. Like I know that they have most of those editions at the Spotlight itself.
At the newspaper.
But there's just probably those are the only two places in the world where those newspapers still exist. One here in the library and one there. So we have a responsibility to try to preserve it.
It's interesting because they reach out to Guilderland in their coverage, and the Spotlight newspaper, the Guilderland Library didn't do that.
Well, it's interesting. Not to take away from our project, but the Guilderland Library did do a very similar thing with the Altamont Enterprise. So they took that newspaper as sort of the more of their paper of record, And they did a similar project with that paper.
You know, with everything that Mark is saying, how great this library is, I saw a sign
say
that. Well, I'm making a conclusion.
Don't ruin my reputation.
Make a conclusion. Actually, Bethlehem Library was #1, wasn't it?
Yes, by Capital Region Living magazine, we were voted.
I think that was pretty good because I have, for on occasion, I did go to the Guilderland Library and the Saratoga Library, and to me, they were impressive. What makes us #1? I mean, the building was nice, but obviously I didn't inspect everything that they have there.
Not to sound too trite, the thing that separates us is our users. The nice thing about this community is that they demand a great library, and then they use a great library. I mean, they really they support, obviously, they pay taxes, they support, they allow us to have a really great library, but then they demand services from us, and they really use the library.
Well, you have a population here, you say, of 26,609, and you only have 19,000, 20,000 library cardholders.
Sure.
So
how many 3-year-old kids? I mean, how many?
Well, I don't think the population.
Right, but I'd say that for most libraries, that's actually a pretty good ratio of library cardholders. Okay. Some people just aren't going to use the library, and it's okay. I would love to say that we can serve them in lots of different ways, and now we have downloadable books. We could reach out to them. We're trying to reach them.
But is there any way, like when you go to the DMV, you get a form to register to vote? Okay?
Oh, I would.
Can you do something where when they pay their tax bill, that they get a library card?
It's a great idea. If I can figure that out, we'll do it. Yeah, I would. We want to be where people are, and that's actually one of the big things that we're doing now. We're reaching out. We already have great outreach with the school district.
That's part of what I like about the show, is that we have the chance to give you new ideas and give our guests new ideas.
So talk about the show, The Jewish View, that again, like I used the library many times, and there's a nice Judaica collection. I mean, that's specific for the Jewish View. That that you wanted. I know the Jewish World newspaper. I mean, it's also, you'd say you pay taxes. On the other hand, books are expenses.
They are
expensive. I know people say, "Oh, you read that book?" Yeah, I took it out of the library. What do you think? I don't have money to spend every time I want to read a book. I read a lot, and also newspapers. They can. How many magazines are there? There's a whole racks full. I mean, you can go broke. I mean, if you And here at the library, I mean, you pay your taxes, but on the other hand, it's free. You're going to pay taxes anyway.
Right. And for those people that choose not to use the library, that's an expense for them. But for the people that use the library, their money comes back to them very quickly.
Well, it seems that visitors to the library, you had over 352,000. Is that for a year?
Last year, yeah, that would be a year count, right? Just sort of door count for the year. And that number, it's hard to count exactly. I wouldn't sit here and say there's exactly 352,000 people walk through the door.
Well, I thought you were counting standing by the door.
Right, yeah.
With the clicker, yeah.
It would take a lot of staff time to do.
It's like 1,000 people a day. That's what it comes down to.
Sure.
A lot.
And we're open a lot of hours, and that's, we want to be available to the people.
So you have 30 full-time staff and 45 part-time staff?
That's about right.
Is that true still? Yeah. So that's 75
people, bodies in the library, and it's because we're open 12 hours most days, right? And we're open on Friday night. That's a little bit different than a lot of libraries. We're open 9 to 9 on Friday, and then 10 to 5 on Saturday, and 12 to 5 Sundays, except for in the summer when we close.
We always ask this.
Sure.
But can you do more with less?
We have been doing more with less. That's one of the things that certainly with the levy limit tax cap, we absolutely shifting money from the personnel line to the collections line. That's been one of my jobs.
Well, I have to congratulate you. I guess you're the president of the New York Library Association.
Not quite yet. President-elect. So in November I'll be.
In November.
Yes.
Okay. Well, then,
that's a whole New York State.
Well, in the association that lobbies on behalf of libraries, so you'll get to know Senator Hugh Farley if you don't know him.
I already know Hugh Farley. Yes, he may or may not know me, but I get into his face pretty frequently.
Well, he will get to know you, I'm sure, as president. Because I know you have a very important lobby day every year at the Capitol.
Absolutely.
And you're always promoting reading. So
that's what we're there for.
That's what you're there
for. It's reading, children's education, lifelong learning, equality. That's.
So at the state legislature, do they not regard libraries in the same way that they regard other types of education?
Absolutely. K through 12 education gets the lion's share. I mean, it gets a lion's share, not the lion's share of the budget, but it gets a huge part of the whole state budget. Healthcare and K through 12 education, those are the big parts. And libraries are in the crumbs of the in-between nooks and crannies, and certainly in the education department, we are a small fraction of the education department.
So do you find that you're like the child that's left in the corner? That's just like-
No, I think I will always advocate for more money for
Of
libraries.
course.
The state money is really what knits both public libraries and then different types of libraries together through their funding of what we call library systems. That's the state. The state money
Right.
mostly goes to that. And there are some other special programs that state money helps fund. But that interlibrary cooperation is huge. It's what allows us to have a collection the size of ours, but really have millions of items in our collection available to people.
So how are Pat Fahey's the Assemblywoman for the town
Absolutely,
of Bethlehem, and Senator Neil Breslin's the senator. He's a resident of Bethlehem.
his wife's a librarian.
His wife's a librarian. How are they on the library issue?
Both of them are.
I mean, Pat Fahey used to be a school board member, so
Right.
she's in that education mode.
And Pat Fahey has, stepped out and been called on the carpet for supporting libraries. I mean, but she's a friend of libraries. She absolutely.
What do you mean called out on the
Well,
carpet?
she supported the Albany Public Library when they were going through their expansion. She absolutely supported that, and I think
Yeah.
some people were less than thrilled about that. But
okay.
but she certainly is a supporter of libraries and education, children's issues. She's huge on all that
Just
stuff.
again, it's the Jewish view,
Yeah.
and it's a Jewish idea. And I've said this to superintendent of schools that we've had, Bethlehem and many others, and it's really a Jewish idea because this idea of public school education is really pure American. It's a few hundred, so people think 10,000 years old. It's only 200 years old. Benjamin Franklin, if he started the public library, again, it was a new, innovative idea just 200 years ago. And Judaism always held that education for every person, not just for the special classes or if you have money. Like, again, you don't have money to buy a book, well, you're not going to read. And here it's like I say, you can be the first person in the world, and whoever you are, hey, you get a free library card, and like you say, 1 million books are at your disposal
Sure.
for zero money. And this is a very Jewish idea, and to me, it's the backbone of America because it's not a totalitarian state, not a fascist state, keep people ignorant and illiterate. It's just like you say, a public school system, the libraries are there to educate people. Again, it's a shame on people if they don't use it. They're paying their taxes, they're in a society and can't force anybody to read. But on the other hand, it's there and it's open to any person's society. And I really think that's what makes a society great, is the reading, the books, the education.
And how long have you been director of this library?
Director of the library, it's called interim, and about 2.5 years, we'll call it.
Two and a
About
half years.
Yeah. But I've been at Bethlehem Public Library for more than 14 years.
And what did you do in the first 12 years?
Sure. When I came here, I was hired from Albany Public Library. I came in as the head of circulation and technical services, and that's not actually the computers. That's in Library Ease. That's the processing of books and the cataloging of library materials. That was my department. And then I did move into IT for the information technology. I was the head of that, and then I became the assistant director of the library. And then when Nancy Pieri retired, I became the director of the library.
So you understand the most menial job, or the least innovative job.
The most important job, which is
Well-
checking out books to people? Yes, I do.
Do they still put the card in the back and stamp the card? Do they
We
still put that
we
in the
do,
back?
though.
You do.
Plans are afoot to try to come up with a more modern solution to
What
giving
would
people.
be a more modern solution?
I think like a lot of libraries have moved towards giving checkout receipts to people so they can list the due dates. But also, I'm looking at the ability to email that directly to people, just like when you're at Target or something and you check out. They say, "Do you want us just to email your receipt?" We should be able to do the same thing. You want us just to email your date dues home with you? Send that home.
Well, the Albany Public Library, you can take a page out of their book, maybe instead of reinventing the wheel, because
Yes.
I can go online and I could say, see when my DVD needs to be returned.
Yes, and we actually use the same system.
So-
People can still do that, but some of our people absolutely do like to have that date in the back of the book. They love that stamp, but there's a lot of labor. I mean, talk about staff time. There's a lot of labor and staff time that goes into stamping those cards all ahead of time and getting them in the back of the book.
What was your most enjoyable job out of all of these jobs? What you're doing right now, or
Yeah, I would say I enjoy this job the most of all because I get to poke my nose into everything.
Right.
Unfortunately, what that means is I don't have time to be as authoritative on any one subject as I used to
Now,
be. So.
I know you're still young, but what were you, before the 14 years ago when you first
Yep.
started here, where did you come from?
I was at Albany Public Library, actually. I was their head of reader services
Okay.
there, and then I was an archivist before that for about a year, not for very long. And then before that, I was in graduate school.
Do you have an MLS?
I do have an MLS,
Okay.
yeah.
And that's Masters of Library Science
Correct.
for the audience. Yeah, so that's great.
Right from SUNY Albany. So
SUNY Albany.
local,
Well,
yeah.
friend of mine.
When it comes back to like Mark's saying, the most basic things, there's I don't know how many books, thousands of books that are published every year. How do you pick out which books? That's more like the grunt. I don't know if that's probably
Sure,
not your
well-
job. You're at the head of things, but it's a grunt of, hey, I'll take that book, because again, sometimes I just tell them, hey, once you get that book, and they do listen, and people should know that also.
Well, that's one of the ways we absolutely take requests from our users is an important way that we know what books we need. We also use review journals, and we look at those reviews very carefully and try to use our knowledge of what has circulated in the past to make sure we get books in that people are interested in. It's actually a big part of what the librarians do here in the libraries, make sure, we call it collection development. So for both children and adults, how do we make sure that we have the collections that people want in here and available to people?
Where's the suggestion box?
The suggestion box is right on the information desk. So
Oh.
we have little forms. It's Bethlehem. We have forms.
Okay.
So you can fill out a little form. If I can get that form online, I'll work on that too.
Okay.
So
Now, the library board you mentioned.
Yep.
Jeremy Martell is the president?
he's the president of the board.
Okay,
correct.
and how recently did that happen?
He is the president this year, but he is in the he's completed 4 years on the board.
Right.
So
But I remember there was a meeting that I came to
Yeah.
where there wasn't a president.
he wasn't the president, right? Well, he became the president at the July meeting. So he's a president. We have a school year, fiscal year. So he's the president from now till.
So there was a
next June.
time when there was where there was a time when there was no president?
There's always a president.
There's always a
so
president,
there's always a
okay.
president. And it
So-
basically it goes to that meeting when they vote, and then it's like
Okay.
everything. Officially, he took over when they
Okay.
voted him in.
So
as president.
Jeremy's the
Correct.
president. And is he someone you get along with? I mean, because he has to be elected.
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Like
I
a
mean, by
school
the
board,
people.
just like a school
He has
board.
to run town-wide.
Correct.
Okay.
They're school district wide, as
Okay.
it were. He is elected directly in a school district wide election, right at on the same ballot as the school district budget and the school board.
And for no money.
For no money, absolutely. It is largely it's absolutely a non-compensated job, but they're all really dedicated to libraries.
Mark, we're out of time. It was
Wow.
really interesting talking to Geoff Kirkpatrick, and I want to say thank you for two things. One, for hosting our Jewish View and Bethlehem cable here right in the Bethlehem Library, and number one, doing a great job in the library. Like I say, I'm probably one of the top users. All my kids, I bring back 10 books at a time. They're big readers, and they like taking out books. So you're doing a great job, and congratulations on being the #1 library in the Capital
Thank you.
District. And thank you for being on the
Much
show.
success.
Excellent.
Much
Thank you
success.
very much. Thank you for having me.